Forget 47 Ronin from Japan. This is the ultimate revenge story. You know, the 47 Ronin died for honor. This group didn't just die, they fought for revenge against a whole empire, waging a battle they knew they couldn't win just to make their enemies pay. What happens when a revolution that promises liberty turns on its own people? When a new republic executes its king, one region of France refuses to fall in line. They aren't soldiers. They're farmers, priests, and nobles. And when their traditions and their god are threatened, they become masterless warriors in a fight to the death. This is the story of the Vendée uprising and how simple peasants became the French Ronin. In 1789, the French Revolution kicked off with the promise of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But for the people of the Vendée, a deeply religious and rural part of Western France, these words quickly started to feel empty. The Vendéans weren't against the revolution at first. They were hoping for reform. But their identity was tied to two things: their land and their Catholic faith. The revolution in Paris would soon attack them both. The first major blow came in 1790 with the civil constitution of the clergy. This new law demanded that all priests swear an oath of loyalty to the French nation and its laws, placing the state above the Pope in Rome. In the Vendée, where priests were trusted community leaders, most refused. These non-juring priests were outlawed and hunted down, replaced by government loyalists the peasants saw as imposters. While the persecution was immediate, it was a sign of worse things to come, as the revolutionary government would later escalate to closing churches and banning public worship during the height of its anti-Christian campaigns. The second blow was the execution of King Louis XVI in January 1793. To the Vendéans, this was an unforgivable crime that destroyed the sacred bond between king and country. The final spark landed in March 1793. The new republic, now at war with most of Europe, demanded 300,000 men be drafted into its army. For the Vendéans, being forced to fight and die for a regime that attacked their priests and killed their king was the last straw. Riots exploded across the region. What started as protests against the draft quickly became a full-blown insurrection. Armed with little more than pitchforks, hunting rifles, and a burning sense of injustice, the peasants turned to their local leaders and to God. By April, they were organized, and the Catholic and Royal Army was born. This was a peasant uprising, but they knew they needed military leaders. They turned to local nobles, many with combat experience. Two figures stood out, becoming the heart and soul of this unlikely army. First was Jacques Cathelineau, a humble wagoner known for being incredibly devout. They called him the Saint of Anjou. Cathelineau wasn't a noble, but his charisma and unshakable faith were magnetic. He rallied thousands of peasants, leading them in prayer before charging into battle. Under his leadership, the rebels won stunning early victories, capturing major towns like Saumur and Thouars. He was eventually named the first generalissimo of the Catholic and Royal Army. The second was Henri de la Rochejaquelein, a nobleman who was only 21 years old. Daring and completely fearless, he became a legend with his famous call to his men: "If I advance, follow me. If I retreat, kill me. If I die, avenge me." He was the classic warrior aristocrat, fighting shoulder to shoulder with the peasants who loved him. Together, these leaders, the peasant saint and the boy general, lit a fire in the Vendée. The Catholic and Royal Army, often called the Whites, swelled to an estimated 40,000 to 80,000 fighters. They weren't a professional force. Many would fight a battle and then go home to tend their fields. But in the spring and summer of 1793, they seemed unstoppable. They took towns, seized weapons, and sent shockwaves through the Republic. They were masterless warriors, their king was dead, their traditional lords powerless. They became Ronin, fighting for a lost cause and a sacred duty. This is exactly the kind of forgotten history we love to tell. If you want more stories you didn't learn in school, check out our History You Can Finish on your lunch break playlist. I've linked it above. Alright, now back to the Vendée, because after this high point, everything is about to go wrong. The high point for the Vendéans came in June 1793 with the siege of the vital port city of Nankin. A victory there could have opened a direct line for British support. The Vendéan forces, led by Cathelineau, threw everything they had at the city. But the Republican defenders, known as the Blues, were dug in and determined. The attack failed. Even worse, it was a disaster. During the fight, Jacques Cathelineau was hit by a sniper's bullet. The Saint of Anjou died 2 weeks later, and the rebellion's divine momentum seemed to die with him. The Republic, now in the iron grip of the Reign of Terror, saw its chance. It flooded the region with veteran troops, determined to crush the brigands of the Vendée for good. The Vendéans, now led by others, and the young La Rochejaquelein were pushed back. In October 1793, they suffered a crushing defeat at the Second Battle of Cholet. Facing total destruction, La Rochejaquelein made a desperate choice. He led the remains of the army and a massive column of tens of thousands of civilians, women, children, the old and the sick north across the Loire River. This tragic exodus, known as the Vieille de Galerne or North Wind Turn, was a gamble to spark a bigger revolt and find a port for English aid. It ended in pure disaster. Hounded by Republican armies, the massive group of refugees, perhaps as many as 80,000 people, marched into a brutal winter. They failed to take the port of Granville and were forced to retreat. The retreat became a death march. Starving, freezing, and ravaged by disease, the once great Catholic and royal army was cornered and wiped out in the battles of Le Mans and Savonay in December 1793. In a chilling letter, whose authenticity some historians debate, Republican General Francois-Joseph Westermann reportedly wrote to his commanders, "There is no more Vendée. I have crushed the children under the hooves of our horses, massacred the women. I have not taken a single prisoner." Westermann's boast was a bit premature, but it signaled a new, horrifying phase of the war. This was no longer about stopping a rebellion. It was about annihilation. In January 1794, the Committee of Public Safety in Paris approved a plan from General Louis-Marie Turreau to pacify the region. His method was the infamous colonnes infernales, the Inferno columns. 12 army columns were ordered to march across the Vendée and destroy everything. Turreau's instructions were brutally clear, giving the directive to burn everything and put rebels to the sword. What followed was one of the darkest chapters of the French Revolution. It was an episode so brutal that some historians have controversially labeled it a genocide, though the term is heavily debated. For months, Turreau's columns swept through the countryside on a scorched earth campaign of unimaginable cruelty. They burned villages, farms, and forests. They slaughtered livestock and destroyed crops to create a famine. They massacred civilians without mercy. Men, women, and children were bayoneted or shot. Vendéan women were seen as a particular threat, accused of raising another generation of rebels. In the city of Nantes, the government representative Jean-Baptiste Carrier organized mass executions he called noyades, or drownings. Thousands of Vendéan prisoners, including priests and nuns, were tied together, sometimes in cruel parodies called Republican marriages, loaded onto barges, and drowned in the Loire River. The infernal columns and the drownings led to a staggering loss of life. While exact numbers are impossible to know and estimates vary widely, some modern studies place the total death toll from the war at around 170,000 to 200,000 for the Vendéans. The Vendée was turned into what some in Paris had demanded, a desert. This hidden chapter of the French Revolution shows how cries for liberty can sometimes lead to tyranny. If you think these forgotten stories deserve to be told, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more history you probably didn't learn in school. The main Vendéan resistance was shattered, but the fire wasn't completely out. Small guerrilla bands, led by tough commanders like Francois de Charette and Jean-Nicolas Staufflet, kept fighting from the forests for 2 more years. But the great Catholic and royal army was gone. Charette was finally captured and executed in March 1796, which effectively ended the First War. Peace didn't truly return to the Vendée until years later, and it wasn't a gift from the Radical Republic. The government had already tried pacification with a mix of force and amnesty, most notably through General Lazare Hoche, who successfully calmed the region after the worst of the terror. The final step came with Napoleon Bonaparte. Seeking to unite a fractured France, he signed the Concordat of 1801 with the Pope. This nationwide agreement restored freedom of worship across France, finally addressing the religious grievances that had sparked the uprising in the first place. The Vendée uprising is a brutal, complicated story about people who rose up against a power that tried to remake their world by destroying their faith. Framed as the French Ronin, they were masterless warriors, abandoned by the state, fighting for God and tradition in a bloody last stand. Their war remains a painful memory in France, a stark reminder that revolutions can devour their own children, and that the fight for liberty can mean very different things to different people. The scars on the landscape have healed, but the memory of the French Ronin and their sacrifice endures.